I'm Simon Pare, and I'm going to read an excerpt from Nadine Olonetzky's striking book, Where Does the Light Go When the Day is Over? A park bench. Huge snowflakes are now falling slowly and at airy intervals from the sky, the size of handkerchiefs, my mother would call snow like this. They're heavy with water. They melt instantly on the soil in the garden in the front of the house and on the dark grey street while the blackbirds sing as if it was spring. It was spring when my grandfather Moritz had to board a train. Treblinka, my father said. Treblinka? We don't know exactly. He had decided that I was old enough. I was 15. He ordered me, there's no other word for it, to come to the botanical gardens in Zurich. He fixed a time and a place, and I had to be punctual, and there on a park bench he began to talk. At long last, he told me, all at once. After years of silence he spoke. He spoke as if it had all happened yesterday. He spoke in the present tense, a present tense that I cannot lay claim to as I write this story. He told me in short sentences. They came crashing down on me like lumps of rock, crashing onto and into me. He buried me until I had disappeared under a pile of words, sentences, images and rocks, a heap of pain. The idea that I might ask questions came to me only later, but by then it was too late. On that park bench in the botanical gardens I heard for the first time that my grandfather Moritz had lost his life. Why didn't my father say that my grandfather Moritz had been murdered? He told me many things, and many things he didn't. What did he tell me? Do I remember correctly? Were the things he didn't say simply not important, or had he forgotten them? Or were the things he didn't tell me actually the most important of all? I felt pinned to that bench, and as the words, sentences, images and rocks came crashing down on me, my eyes kept darting to the plants. It was late summer, echinacea, reedgrass, sedum. I now know that my grandfather didn't go to Treblinka that spring. He went to Izbica, 300 kilometres away. It's in the documents. Izbica, Ishbice in Yiddish, southeast of Lublin, a transit ghetto, and KL is what it said in the documents. A concentration camp in the occupied Polish territories in the general government. Izbica was the antechamber of the extermination camps. For Moritz too, Izbica seems to have been planned as a stop on the way to his final destination. But Izbica might have been the end of the line for Moritz. We don't know. Piano. Spring came, as it always does. Time doesn't simply stop because it notices that something is going awry, shouldn't happen, must be prevented. It just keeps going. And so on the 24th of April 1942, SA men once again watched people packing their belongings in many apartments. They'd received a sheet of instructions on how to proceed with deportations. This time, they knew that there were no freight cars available, so additional equipment, mattresses, work and cooking utensils, etc. are to be omitted, as if anyone had taken them along on the first deportation convoys. Why do so many Jews play the violin or the clarinet? My uncle Ephraim asked me later. Because you can't flee with a piano. He creased up laughing and had tears in the corner of his eyes. Did Moritz set out with a violin on the 24th of April? Did he play the clarinet? Not as far as I know. In his last place of his own, the one in Gartenstrasse, there was indeed a piano. I find it in the documents. But he had left that behind long ago. What would he have called what he did when he left the third apartment he hadn't chosen to live in? Abandonment of household effects, as the documents refer to it? Not in his wildest imaginings could my grandfather have suspected that one day, after the end of the Nazi dictatorship, some legal specialist in some office somewhere would choose these words to describe what had been taken from him, stolen from him. Or mightier for feeling that he had abandoned something, the piano perhaps. If anything, he must have abandoned his son, my father, or the other way round. My father was forced to abandon him. On the 25th of April 1958, Stuttgart's main financial office objected as a precaution against the claim of restitution for loss of property. Experience has taught us, the letter reads, that Jews were obliged, not least due to limited living space, to dispose of parts of their household effects gradually, so that they often possessed only the most basic personal effects in later years. The question regarding household effects that were still in the deportee's possession at the time of his deportation depended, in the absence of corresponding evidence, on the additional question of whether and to what extent he had been subjected to changed living arrangements prior to his deportation. The testator had once resided at Gartenstrasse 17, and was later obliged to move on to the building at Hospitalstrasse 34. The claimant's representatives should address this question. And anyway, who said Moritz was dead? The deportation list and the deportation certificate were not sufficient. There was no death certificate. Maybe Moritz would turn up again, 77 years old by now, but as alive and tough and stubborn as ever. Maybe all the beds and tables, the crockery and the bed linen had not been sold off, or bombed out, or vanished, but would reappear and not need to be reimbursed. These passages give some impression of the varieties of tone and genre that Nadine Olonetzky weaves together so successfully in a remarkable book. Some are personal, contemplative, structured around her garden, the seasons, specific objects. Others are questioning about what her father felt and did, speculative about how much can really be known. And then there's the bureaucraties of the Nazis and the post-war German authorities set up to compensate the victims, but doing everything they could to thwart their claims. It took her father nearly 20 years to receive a paltry, mean-minded sum of money. Photography also runs through this book, as a family ritual, as a medium of memory, precious but always partial. After his escape to Switzerland, Nadine Olonetzky's father became a talented amateur photographer. Her uncle was a professional photographer, and she herself has been a photo critic and editor for 30 years. Where Does the Light Go When the Day is Over is a moving and poetic memoir, and a meticulous exploration of the long aftermath of the Shoah, bound together by a strong and personal voice. I can't recommend it highly enough.